And we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sport. How are we feeling? The Springbok squad has officially been announced for the end of year tour. Some massive calls. And a squad I feel that we needed to have been braver. And I think we've missed a trick with the squad that's been announced. So a little bit frustrated. I think there's probably two players missing. And I don't think it would have been difficult to accommodate them. And I think that had we done it, we'd probably all be sitting here smiling, to be honest. We'd probably be quite happy with life and where we're at and stuff like that with the squad. Look, at the end of the day, it's a squad that's been trimmed down a lot. So we're talking about a 32-man squad compared to a 45-man squad that we were working with earlier this year. So there were always going to be a lot of players who were going to miss out. So I did a mock squad yesterday, and I was only off by 3 players, which I think sort of shows you that up to about 29, I think it was quite a straightforward sort of squad selection. But there are a couple of players who have been missing. So in case you've missed it, the Springbok squad is as follows. I'm going to read it out. We're going to get into this. We're going to a couple of people going to join us for a little bit, and we're going to work our way through the squad. And I want to see what you guys have to say. So start smashing the like, get your comments into the chat. I think it's going to be quite a busy show. So get your comments in. If there's something you want us to specifically discuss, you can send a super chat or something like that, so we can make sure you don't miss it. If you'd like to become a member of the channel as well, it's the pinned comment there. It's going to be very, very interesting to sort of see what the reaction is. But first of all, let's go through the squad, and then we're going to bring in Dill, who's on the side, and then hopefully we'll have Carl joining us as well. But the squad is as follows. Your 5 props are Thomas Atoy, Stephen Kitsoff, Vincent Koch, Oxen Chair, Trevor Nyakani. Kind of expected that, to be honest. It's all of the props that have been playing. Thomas Atoy probably would have played more had he not left the Rugby Championship, but he did play in that Argentina game. Hookers, Joseph Dwebe, Malcolm Marx, Bongi Manambi. Very, very straightforward. Locks, Luat Diaga, Eben Etzebeth, Salman Murat, Marvin Ori. So Salman Murat has been called up for the first time, which might sound a little bit surprising given the fact that he's just come back from injury. But I think from the sounds of it, Rassie Erasmus really does rate him. I think he probably would have been in the squad earlier this year had he not had that injury, sort of that neck injury in sort of June, July. Your loose forwards are Sia Cleese, who obviously captains the side, Kwagga Smith, Marco Verstappen, Dwayne Vermeulen, and Jasper Wiese. And then Franco Mostert has been named as a utility forward. Now, I think that's where we're missing a trick. Franco Mostert being named as utility forward, Marvin Ori keeping his spot in the squad. I don't have anything against Marvin Ori, but I think that's probably where we could have made a space. And then scrum halves, Herschel Yankees, Kobus Reinach, Grant Williams. Fly halves, Alton Yankees, Andre Pollard. Only 2 fly halves. Mornestein has retired from international rugby, so he is not part of the squad. In the midfield, you've got Lekanya Damien De Lindy, Jesse Creel. Your outside backs are Aple Fassi, Willie Leroux, Makazoloma Pimpy, Spur and Corsi. So no Cheslin Colby, who is injured, and no Warwick Halant, who has not been called up. Your utility backs are Damien Willemse and Frans Steyn. So, yeah, I think it's frustrating because I think there are about three, probably 2 major names, but I think there are sort of a couple of spots that we could have worked this around. But get your comments into the chat, and we're gonna chat about this. We're gonna discuss this, and if we don't, whatever we don't get through today, we're gonna go live tonight. We're gonna be able to sort of break it down, sort of be a bit more, sort of probably less reaction, a bit more analytical about it. But I'm seeing quite a few people slightly disappointed about the squad. There's no Peter Steph the Toy because of injury, no Cheslin Cole because of injury and stuff like that. I'm gonna bring in Dill and get his sort of reaction on the squad. Dill, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me, Steve?
Yeah. So, first of all, how are you doing?
I'm great, and you, eh?
Yeah, look, can't complain. What was the initial reaction to the squad?
So he's gone for safety. He's gone for continuity. He hasn't really thrown anything out there. I hoped he would a bit more, because I just feel like obviously we've had a lot of the same selections. So I just feel like if we're going to grow the squad, like we need to start blooding some youngsters, and we need to start looking at where we're going to be for the next World Cup. But I'm very happy with Murat. As a Stormers fan, particularly, I've watched him come through the ranks. He's now one of the co-captains. Obviously, that'll change when Kitsoff gets back, I think, whenever that would be. But so I think he's really stepped up this season. He's got a couple poor yellow cards, though, but I think he's sort of in that phase where he's been a young player for quite a while, and I think he feels like now he can impose himself on the game properly at this level. So I think it's a good call. I think it's more of a long-term selection. I think he would be his best maybe in 2 more seasons. Maybe then he could, really give it a go for the starting spots. But anyway, it's good for him. And yeah, like I was hoping for more, but expecting pretty much this. I think Johan Goosen's a bit unlucky. I think if he hadn't done his ACL, he could have been involved. So yeah, on a whole, I'm not terribly disappointed, but I wanted more.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was having a look at it, I think it's probably about 95% happy, and quite expected in many ways because it is a much smaller squad. So basically, if you didn't play during the Rugby Championship at all, you weren't part of the squad. I don't think there's a single player who's in the squad who didn't play at least one game throughout. I think Grant Williams is the only player, but have we got Springbok? We've got a scrum off prices, so he wouldn't have been there had Faf de Klerk been fit. So it's only him and Salman Murat who are uncapped. But yeah, look, I think it's just what I was saying when I just released my initial reactions. I think that there are probably 2 changes I would have liked to make, and that's probably would have been leaving out Marvin Orie, making Franco Mostert a lock, and then bringing in Evan Roos. And then probably leaving out. I mean, it's a big call, but I'd probably would have liked to have left out of Frans Steyn and taken Warwick Gelant. I don't understand how Warwick Gelant doesn't make it. And just to talk about how Warwick Gelant doesn't make it, Lacanya's just jumped on. We've also got Carl waiting in the wings, so let's bring them in. And Lacanyo, what's can't be happy with not seeing Gelant there.
Yeah, good evening. Yeah, a bit disappointed that Steve. I think it was once again an opportunity, but I heard Dole just speak about sort of the safety that Jacques has opted for, right, in terms of the selection. But I think Gelant was initially there. He was part of the setup. So to see him play fantastic rugby and not get recalled, I think is a bit disappointing, especially considering how well he's sort of played. And I honestly think he's sort of the incumbent for the 15 jersey. So yeah, a bit disappointed not to see him, and also just, I think we need to ask ourselves sort of what is the point of an India tour? Yes, it is to get results, but I think traditionally, like a part of it has been to blood, right? To give opportunity to sort of players to get the exposure at international level, right? And I look at this squad and I'm asking myself, is it wise to choose a Frans Steyn and a Willie, where you could have had maybe a younger player, someone, to give that opportunity to? Yeah, but certainly on the Gelant factor, I think I was calling for him to jump straight back into the squad when he returned from injury, but he's had 4 fantastic.
I'm calling to go into the starting lineup.
But then don't you think it's
for Gelant?
Yeah, like I mean, he's just come back from his.
Well, if it's not too soon for Murat, I suppose it would be my argument, and it wasn't too soon for Pollard either. So I don't know. Yeah. I think they have missed a slight trick with that. Cole, as a non-Springbok fan, as an England fan, you look at that squad and are you nervous? Are you scared? Are you sitting there thinking, thank God they didn't pick Warwick Gelant, or does that squad still frighten you?
No, thank God they didn't pick Cock. No, I like looking at the England squad that's been announced and comparing it with this. I mean, it's actually nice to see Eddie Jones being like, you know what, fuck it, let's bring in some entirely.
Who would have thought,
which has been really nice to see. I think for me, these games, yes, okay, they're important because yes, they're on the international stage, but they're so much more important for building towards a World Cup. Like, you don't have to really worry about winning these. Like, this is where you blood your new players. This is where, you kind of figure out what team you're going to take forwards to the next big competitions, which is why I'm happy with the England squad. I don't think there's enough new talent in this team to really do that.
Yeah, I'll say it. Look, to be fair, I think I only make probably 2 changes to the squad, and I'd be happy. I think if they had gone Franco Mostert as a lock and left out Marvin Uri and taken Evan Ruiz. And they had taken Warwick Galant and left out a Frans Steyn, for example. Then I probably look at that squad and I think that that's pretty bang on right. I think at a certain degree you do have to be sort of safe to a certain degree. I think and take the players. But I also think that I just think that Frans Steyn is not making the next World Cup. We know that Morne Steyn isn't. He announced his retirement earlier, and as I think Adil was saying, I think Johan Goosen. Now I think that would have been an interesting one. I think Johan Goosen probably would have been part of the squad had he not been injured. In which case, I would have been interested to see who we would have been in for. Whether they would have gone with him as utility back ahead of Frans Steyn, or if they would have named him as a fly half. But I mean, I know he doesn't like to see it, but I could almost have even justified, not going with a Jesse Creel and naming Galant and seeing, if he goes down, Damien Willemse, Frans Steyn can both play in the centres. If need be, I'm telling you right now, Warwick Galant could slot in an outside centre and do a job. But I suppose this is the squad we've got, and now it comes down to how we use this squad, because we talk about blooding youth, we talk about using youngsters. There's still an uncapped Grant Williams who can get a chance this tour. There's an uncapped Salman Murat who can get a chance this tour. Aprile Fassi has only had, I think, 2 games, so he can get a chance this tour. Damien Willemse he's got 14 caps to his name, but he hasn't really had too much of a chance in the Rugby Championship. So I suppose it now comes down to you've picked the squad. You haven't necessarily put as many youngsters as you can, but now it's important to use the entire squad that you've got, because at the end of the day, if Aprile Fassi gets 2 tests and Damien Willemse gets maybe 2 starts or at least 1 start, and Salman Murat gets 2 caps, at least you can leave the end of your tour with 5 players who are young, very much in the future, having got a few games. Which I suppose could be the one thing. So I think we probably haven't rotated throughout the Rugby Championship as much as we would have liked. I think we probably missed a bit of a trick when it comes to Australia. But Dill, I mean, you look at that squad, and with the games you've got, it's quite tricky because you've got Wales, who are Six Nations champions, followed by Scotland, who traditionally have been the weaker side. But I mean, Gregor Townsend, when that Scotland side plays well, they're a hell of a hard side to beat. And I think if you look at the Six Nations, they should have done a lot better. They were so close in almost every single game they played. But then you've got the big one, England. So how do you think you get the balance right in terms of making sure that a Murat gets onto the field, that Willemse gets onto the field, that maybe Grant Williams gets a debut? Which of those sort of games, how would you approach it? Do you go full strength first game, second game, third game? How would you think we should go about it?
I think that for sort of experience and to give those like a sort of chance and blood them and whatnot, I think we got to target the Scottish game. I think we have to start the tour well. I think we have to earn the right to rotate. I've said that a couple of times. So we have to go north and we have to play a strong game against Wales. I would say pretty much full strength, but I'd like to see some small variations, like maybe like a Fassi in for Leroux, or just some sort of growth on what we have, because it's been stagnant in a big sense. So I would guess it's going to be quite strong for Wales and England, and hopefully we earn the right to rotate for Scotland, because I mean, Springbok fans expect to win every week, regardless of whether you're trying to grow the squad or not. So they will be under pressure if they don't get the win first up. So that's what I think they're going to do.
I think it's a very good point. I think the fact that we haven't gone and said, fuck it, let's leave behind Jesse Creel, Frans Steyn, even Pollard, and just back a young squad, a bit like Eddie Jones has done. I mean, he left out both Vinopolas, he left out a couple of big players, George Ford. So we haven't done that. And look, I mean, there's a right and there's a wrong, but I suppose, Lucanio, it's now, whilst we still can see a couple of youngsters, we've got to see results. If we picked a squad to go there and get 3 out of 3 and say we are the best in the world, don't you dare question us, type thing.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's always sort of a balancing act. But yeah, I'd just like to see even a Joseph Durba get an opportunity. I think I think where we are, because I asked myself, like, what does such a tour do for Frans Steyn? Right? What benefit does having a Frans Steyn there and him, arguably not even on the fringes of a match day 23 kind of thing? All right, but I think it is a balancing act. It is about getting the W's, but I hope the French players actually get game time. So they go there as sort of the starting, and obviously then sort of the experienced guys as fullback should it go wrong. So against the Wales, against the Scotland, I'd literally play a fussy. I'd give a Joseph Durban an opportunity. And should it go wrong, right, you've got those guys to bring back for the England game. Okay, if it's such a massive thing to a point where it's a do or die, okay, saving the tour or whatever, or the reputation of the national side sort of thing. But yeah, let's hope our youngsters, because it's Damien Williams, how many caps now? 14 or whatever the case may be, and how many minutes in total, right? I think it's also time to just get him to get him give him the opportunity to sort of feel at home in the Bok jersey. And I think there's a question here who asked about the center pairings, and if that's what we're saying Damien Williams is heading into the next World Cup, he's not going to get too many opportunities to test himself at a center, as a center, right? And I think this is a fantastic opportunity to sort of give him the reins and say, okay, show us what you have to offer.
Yeah, and I think it's. I think you're right. I think at the end of the day, we can probably all get behind the squad if we know that we're going to see some variation. Because there's still plenty of young players who haven't played a lot this year, that we'd probably like to see. And I think we're probably quite sort of similar between the I mean, I don't think we make too many changes to the squad. It's probably just there's one or two, which I suppose there will always be. But. So going into Wales now. So as you say, Lekanya is backing a Joseph Dwebe. Where do we see? And I think centers is a very good point. And Carl, will go to you in terms of centers, because I think that is a problem in South Africa at the moment, where Jesse Kriel has played, I think, 2 games this year, and doesn't look like the Jesse Kriel we saw a couple of years ago. Look, I know it's not a long time, not a lot of opportunity to sort of see it, but there's been very little worried about the centre pairing when it starts. Kanya and Damien India, everyone's very happy with that. But if they do go down, we've got Jesse Kriel is the only other recognised centre in that squad. So Carmen, do you see Damien Willems operating at centre? Do you see Frans Steyn operating at centre? They've been named as utility backs. But I mean, when you've got a full back in Apelele Fassi, who can also play wing, would you prefer to see those two, if they do get a chance, get in the centre and still be able to give an Apelele Fassi a chance at a full back or on the wing?
I think, I imagine Steyn will get a chance at centre. I doubt he'll be playing at full back because, as much as Willie le Roux's not been playing amazingly at all recently, South Africa does like to have a fullback that can, turn up the pace when he gets a counter attack. And I don't think Steyn has that pace anymore, if he ever did. So I imagine they'll use him as a bit of a bruiser center because he's still quite a big guy. And, it's especially, to be honest, I think if you get an injury, and then especially in the England game, I think you might have to chuck Steyn on at second center because Tuolangi's in the squad. And you need someone who can front up against Tuolangi, and I'm not sure Willemse will be able to handle that. So I don't know. I think it's difficult. It depends. It depends on the teams that you go up against, because Wales at the moment not doing that great in the URC. But they seem to bring it together whenever they play an international. But that being said, I know they've got a lot of injuries for these up and coming internationals. Like, everyone's questioning why they're even bothering to play New Zealand, because they're missing about 12 starting players. Scotland, they're doing pretty well in the URC at the moment. Glasgow's doing particularly well, except the last game, which was very boring. England, I actually think South Africa will probably be the most interesting game to watch, because it totally depends on the team now Eddie Jones decides to field. Because after, let's say, the Lions Tour and the World Cup, you've now had quite a few games where the normal England players have not fired against South Africa at all. And so do you now try and tweak it a little bit and put in, say, Marcus Smith at 10, but then make no real other changes? Or do you then go, nah, screw it, we're playing a whole new different game against these guys? And then now you put it to South Africa, do they have to now change to suit that, because Marcus Smith at 10 and, you know, like Simmons and Dombrand, that's a whole New England side playing a completely different style of rugby. And I think it'll come down to how South Africa chooses to front against the teams they play against.
I'd also, I think, I'd probably like, as you say, you know, with especially with the different types of teams you're going to be playing. You know, with Scotland, who are a team who likes to play with a bit of tempo, and like to throw the ball around a little bit, you know, then that sort of gives the opportunity for South Africa to go with a bit of maybe a higher tempo side, you know. So I think it'll be nice to see. We all know that Andre Pollard's been under a lot of pressure this year, you know, and Alton Jantjies came with a decent cameo, so that could be quite a nice opportunity, even if you wanted to give Grant Williams a go or start a Herschel Jantjies. I mean, I know Cobus Reinach, we know, is a very quick player, but you know, that could be a nice opportunity to say to a Grant Williams in that stage of the game, you know, we'll give you a go. It could be a nice opportunity to have, you know, a centre. I mean, like a Damien Willemse in the centres next to Alton Jantjies and Apple Defassi in the side, and you say, right, well, if they're going to play with a high tempo, we can also play with a high tempo and sort of getting above that. So it should be quite interesting. I think that the fact that we are down to two fly halves is probably sort of demonstrates the worrying depth we have at fly half in the country at the moment, and injuries are not our friend at the moment, because if we're looking at all the various unions, Johan Goosen, your starting fly half for Bulls, is injured. That's him for the season. Jordan Hendrickson, your starting fly half for the Lions, he might be 20 years old, but he's still the current starting fly half for the Lions and a potential Springbok prospect in the future, currently injured. Cade Voliter, very, very highly rated. He's had, I think, 2 injuries now this year. So, you know, we're looking at, if you were to name another fly half, I mean, you're looking at a Buddha Chamberlain, a flippin' Tim Sweel, Marnie Liebach, Chris Smith. It's not exactly the stuff of legends, is it really? You know, not players you're putting in. They're just not players who are dropping in consistent performances week in, week out. So that is a major issue. And I think that I don't think we can look at Johan Goosen at this stage. I just think we know the Johan Goosen story. It's kind of read out like it has this year, unfortunately. You know, that standard, and we kind of all were waiting for it. You know, after that full Curry Cup, we're thinking, you know, do you dare to dream and think this could be the time when Goosen goes and puts in thing? But then, boom, ACL. That's 9 months.
Yeah, he's out till next season.
Yeah, and unfortunately with his injuries, he usually often comes back from that, and then he's gone again. So Dill, I mean, with fly halves, these two probably are involved in the next World Cup at the moment. It's very difficult. I mean, Alton Jantjies is the older one, but it's very difficult to try and bring in what will be a second choice fly half in the next sort of 18 months, given the fact that the options we've got are very young. But what would you do fly half? Well, I mean, if you had to add a third fly half and there were no, besides Goosen, I'm not going to back Goosen with his injuries, but if there were no injuries in South Africa at the moment, who would your third fly half you'd like to add to that be?
It'd probably be Hendrickson, just because he's quite electric and in terms of growth. But it's quite tricky. Like you said, depth is a concern. But what I do think is that with more rugby in terms of URC that we're going to be playing, I think we will start seeing some better performances pushing through. Maybe guys putting together a string of form, and then we might see some more bolters in the fly off area. But probably Hendrickson. I like him. I think he's going to be brilliant. But yeah, apart from that, not really. Like, I mean, Chris Smith's solid, but would you put him in a Bok jersey? Probably not.
Well, I think if you can't hold on if you can't make the number 10 jersey of the Bulls your own, you can't be in a Springbok squad. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, Frans Steyn can play 10 if he has to. I mean, he played.
Yeah, well, I think so could Damien Willemse. You know, I suppose will be the argument. But
why do we have to be in that situation?
Precisely, you don't want to be sitting there thinking. Yeah, it is a big concern. I think it's the biggest position where I think that it's a major concern. I look at I think that centers wise, we haven't given a lot of centers an opportunity. But if you had to, I think there are some centers floating around that can sort of step up the next couple of years.
But then, Steve, surely in the center area, surely then that, like we touched on a little bit earlier, but how can you say or how can you have a squad that's growing if you're selecting Jesse Creel? Like, I'm sure he adds a lot off field, but like where is a youngster getting involved in the environment for the first time? Where is he learning from the one of the best centre pairings we've had in a very long time, since Jean de Villiers and Jacques Fourie? Like, who's learning off of these oaks?
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, we look at the squad size. Somebody mentioned the squad size, and I think that could. Well, I mean, that's also an interesting point. To go with a 32. I think England have named a 34-man squad. So you've got if England if or I'm pretty sure I saw that, but I mean 32 is a standard, but I reckon we probably could have gotten away with maybe going to a 34. And even if you take 2 or 3 players over and you're not going to use them, the plan is you literally say to them, listen, you're not going to play unless there are like major injuries. But want to see the Similani, we see you as a future outside centre for the box. Come and spend a month. You're not playing URC. Come and spend a month carrying water for Lekanya and just watching what he does. Go to an Evan Ruiz and say, come spend a month watching what Dwayne Vermeulen does. So I think that's probably maybe an interesting look. I mean, we don't know what the exact details are behind the squad, but I think the biggest problem is some of these players just haven't played this year. Somebody was saying that the other day. I believe Fassie's played 2 matches since the Rainbow Cup, which finished in June. Ooh. So that must also be quite a big concern. I mean, Jesse Creel's played 2 matches since June. So you've got all these players. You just haven't played a lot of rugby because of because of all the various bubbles and stuff like that, which obviously hasn't been ideal. But yeah, I think it's a concern because I worry about Jesse Creel. I'm not entirely sure that in a year's time he actually gets into the squad, and he's playing in Japan probably doesn't help him because we don't get to see what he does. And even if we are going to see what he does, it's always that standard. Well, it's it's Japan. And as much as the Japanese-based players will tell you, no, well, it's actually a really high standard of league. I mean, I don't even think Rassi Rasmus rates the Japanese league. You don't make the Springbok squad from the Japan league unless you're already in the sort of setup. So I think it's a very good point that centers, I think, are a bit of an issue. And what do we think about Franco Mostert now being touted as a utility forward? Look, the fact that I think Randall Alstad isn't involved. Apparently it's through injury, but I'm quite chuffed with that because I just don't understand what he's doing there in the first place. But, with Franco Mostert all of a sudden being shifted to 7, Carl, I'll come to you. No Peter Steph the toy. The first thing we did was move him to 7. We then saw a loose trio of Khaleesi, Kwagga Smith, and Dwayne Vermeulen, which worked very nicely in those 2 games against the All Blacks. But interesting not to have gone with a genuine traditional number 7, who can jump in the line out, who's nice and physical, who makes a lot of tackles. Look, I think if his passport sorts, I think Vincent Jatuka is in the squad and is the perfect type of placement there. But are you surprised that we haven't gone and added another loose forward to try and sort of, because I think PCF the toys, he's a bit like Jan Koos, he's been the best player in the world, but he loves an injury.
I mean, it's a bit hard to kind of argue against it and move away from it when you saw how effective it was against the Lions. Struggling a bit. The box in that game was struggling a bit. They bring him on at in the back row, and suddenly you have essentially three locks jumping in the line out, and you steamroll the Lions. It's a bit hard to kind of say, oh well, we should probably stop doing that and do something else when it clearly works against the top sides.
Yeah, and somebody's saying in the comments that Albert Lowe could have been an interesting option. It could have been a very interesting option. I think. I wonder with Albert Lowe, he's played across the entire back row for the last year. So I'm interested to see that he has settled in at 8, whether that helps his Springbok chances or whether it actually almost counts against him. Because at 7, he's competing. Obviously, he's competing against PCF the toy, but he is injured at the moment. But he's up against a Vincent Tuka at the Lions or a Willie Engelbrecht at the Stormers. Where at 8, you're suddenly up against an Evan Ruiz, a Pepsi Buthelezi, who I think would probably be, I reckon Evan Ruiz is ahead of him. I think Pepsi Buthelezi had a pretty good season as well. So it's sort of interesting to see how players moving in and around their sort of franchise setups could potentially sort of impede their block chance. But let's talk about the absentees, the players who have been dropped. The Dupree brothers are gone. Renat Alstad's gone. Wilco Lowe's gone. Obviously, Krobelaar's gone at hooker. No recall ups for Nicholas Janssen van Rensburg. I'm trying to think who else are you missing? Obviously, no Oscar Speckman. No, Morning Staines retired. So yeah, any of those sort of absentees? Because I mean, it's funny that we've talked about the fact that we would like to see other players. We haven't mentioned a single player who's actually been dropped and not been part of the squad. So are there any of those absentees who could count themselves as unlucky, or you would have liked to have seen?
I think from my side, not really, but I think that's only because we haven't really seen them play that much in our system in a game. So it's kind of hard to gauge where a lot of those people are. Like, I haven't seen the Duper twins play in quite a while, and that's again related to the whole bubble sort of issues that they've had to encounter. You know, everything's different now. So I think these oaks that have been cut from the squad, a lot of them we haven't seen it, like Volko Low, like they've just been sort of in the shadows, and I think that's really harsh on them. But I wouldn't say that I'm particularly sad about any of them.
Yeah, I think, and Carl, any of them that I mean, I don't know if you've been based in Europe, I don't know how much more Premiership you watch than the rest of us.
I mean, to be honest, like, you know, I've always been a fan of the Dupree twins, and I think that they should have enjoyed a lot more success with the box because they are consistently great players, and they've been amazing for sale ever since they went there. I don't know who the thing is. I don't know who you'd take out in order to play them. And also, yeah, I think you know, Marcel Coetzee is actually another one of South Africa's greatest wasted talents. Like the guy's insane, and I think
he's very much a victim of I think if he not so much that he's gotten a lot of injuries, but he just always tended to get them at the worst possible times. And I think, you know, if he just, I mean, he was going to be a part of the World Cup squad. I mean, it was pretty much a given. He would be a World Cup winner. So, but it's funny how just those couple of injuries. I mean, he's available now, but he's not getting a look in.
I think also his move to Ulster came probably the wrong time for him. I mean, it was a good move for him, but I think it really damaged his Springbok chances, because I think that was around the time where they were like, yeah, we're not choosing foreign players. We're not doing it. And that kind of screwed him for the rest of his career. But I think, yeah, especially when he was at the Sharks, he was probably should have been like a starting player for the Boks because he was just that good. Yeah.
Now the foreign base thing is interesting because, you know, there's obviously, that's being in the UK, there are a lot of foreign based players. If an injury happens, that can be drafted in quite quickly. Somebody was saying in the comments earlier. So like a Tyrone Green, for example, you know, if you're sitting in Scotland and somebody goes down, he can be there in 2 hours type thing. You know, you can walk to the airport, get a flight, and you can be in the squad in a matter of minutes. So it'll be interesting to see if there are injuries, where some of these foreign-based players lie. A Wilco Low, the Dupree brothers, a Tyrone Green, you know, somebody who's been.
I think Andre Hester
a lot of people talk.
Be there as well.
Somebody's talking about Hester Hazen. You know, so I think that would be quite an interesting sort of aspect. Is if we do pick up injuries, are we? I mean, obviously, it's not without the red list. You obviously still can fly people from South Africa and stuff like that. But visa could be an option, an issue depending on who they are and stuff like that. Whereas you do have a very large contingent. You know, people talk about Jan Surfontein. You know, sitting over there. There's a lot of options. So it's, at the end of the day, I think we're always going to have a very big argument when it comes to Springbok squad, because we could quite easily name an alternative 32, which would also be very competitive. You know, with names we've been throwing around. You know, somebody talking about a Carly Sari who could be up there. You know, talking about, you know, I mean, Wilco Low is a Premiership winner and has barely sort of had a look in at Springbok. He's been in around the squad a lot, but he's hardly played. So I think, I suppose, you know, sort of in wrapping up, do we think that how right have the coach staff got it? You know, do we think that they're about 90% there? We would have liked to see 1 or 2 games. Do you think they've been too safe, or do you think they're right to maybe go with a bit of a safer squad? On the sort of proviso that they do use the full squad, which you might not have seen as much as probably a lot of people would have liked so far this year. And we'll start with you.
Okay, I'm going to go 85. I'm going to go 85 because there's nothing wrong with safety. But there's something wrong with too much safety. I don't think we quite there with being in that area where we not bringing in enough. I still think they have considered, but I would have liked to a greater extent. So that's where they fall short in terms of that 85 instead of higher. But I think safety is okay. But I would have liked a bit more blooding, a bit more future prospects to come in, just thinking ahead, thinking continuously, thinking sustainably. So yeah, 85.
Cal?
I don't know. I think it's a bit too safe. Like, I understand last year why you have to play it safe, because you've got the Lions tour coming up. You have to make sure players are ready for that. But you're 2 years out of a World Cup with, no major competition. Well, no like high stakes things come between that period. And there are players in this squad that won't make the World Cup. So this is not the time to keep those players playing.
Well, I think it's quite interesting with it. I mean, because the fact that we're saying these players won't make the World Cup. I wonder what the conversation is. Is France staying chatting to Jacques saying, yeah, I reckon I could give myself another 2 years. Mornay Steyn has now said no. I mean, people in my comment section yesterday were saying they'd like to see Mornay Steyn in the next World Cup. I said, guys, he'll be 39. It's just come now. But Dwayne Vermeulen will be 38.
I get just bring back Ruan Pienaar.
Well, you laughed. There were calls, eh? There were calls that said, "Oh, he's playing well. We can just bring Ruan." I'm like, guys, come now. I can't be reading comments to see Ruan Pienaar back in the box squad. You can't be doing this to me. But it isn't. I mean, I think Dwayne Vermeulen and France are obviously the big candidates. Villiers Leroux to a certain degree, but he's also, I think he's a bit younger than some people. I mean, he's not like 35, 36. I think he's like 33. So
he just looks old.
32, I think. But yeah, you got those three sort of names who kind of sort of jump out at you as the ones who are sort of questionable. I wonder if this sort of selection, I mean, does the selection right now, is Dwayne Vermeulen planning on playing the next World Cup? I don't think he makes it personally. But, do you think the fact that he is still involved, do you think the plan is right now, the plan is to have Dwayne Vermeulen at the next World Cup?
I think so. I don't know, maybe not in sort of the role that he's been in, but I think there could be a good value, sort of like a Schalk Brits kind of situation. Yeah. Like Schalk Brits, I feel like he added huge value at the World Cup.
Oh, he was good.
Just, in terms of dressing room leadership, team culture, all that kind of stuff. So I think someone like Vermeulen, if he's still playing, I think he could add that kind of value.
Yeah, I'm looking. There's been a big call for that. I mean, old Schalk Brits always the trailblazer, isn't he? But the counter argument, because some people some people didn't even like this or didn't initially like Schalk Brits' role because and I think one person it probably works. But if you have because people have said that same similar thing about Mornay Steyn, they said a similar thing about France Steyn. The problem becomes you can't have three players doing we're there for the experience and to organize golf for the buggers type role when you're thinking, well, that's three spots in the squad that we can't use. It's such a big balancing act, and it's so difficult to say to somebody like a Dwayne Vermeulen who's been so phenomenal for so many years, listen, we're going to keep him in the squad just as sort of a mentorship role. And I think the problem probably becomes he's a loose forward because, right now, you could put Percy Buthelezi, Vincent Tuka, Albert Lowe, Evan Roos all into that box squad and you're not blinking twice. You could put both of the Premier twins back in that box squad, you're not blinking twice. So I wonder, it's an interesting sort of concept that a position which is always at South Africa, always so well stocked, whether we can sort of, because I'd love him to be involved. I think he probably will go into coaching. I think he's got that sort of understanding of the game. So I think I'm very interested to see what he does after rugby. But it is interesting that whether that sort of, if he does fill that role, whether that's worth not having another player and stuff. But look, we can chat till the cows go home. Jacques Nienaber will be chatting now at 12 o'clock, so we'll have that press conference up in the next couple of hours, so we can you'll be able to sort of explain the thinking there. And I'm hoping that they'll name drop a couple of names who are on the radar. I'd really like to know if like Tyrone Green is around there. Is in the obviously Evan Roos is. They've already mentioned the fact that he's in and around there. So it'll be nice to sort of see if there are any other names sort of floating around.
You should bring Yanni Duplessis as the team doctor.
Don't take this now. I already have to watch him. I already have to watch him start like 3 times ahead of Carlo Sardi. So don't put me through this.
Oh man,
but chaps. No, he's very old. He's very old. Thank you very much for joining. We'll probably be back on Thursday for URC panel show. There's no South African teams this weekend, but there's still plenty of URC action. So best believe we'll be having a look at that stuff like that. And then we've got plenty of time to talk about Box Squad before we have our first game on the 6th of November. So we're back into international mode. So yeah, I'll be live tonight for the usual news show, so we can debate this a lot more tonight and stuff like that. Chaps, enjoy the rest of your day. Everybody in the comments, we'll see you guys later. Please do smash like on the way out and subscribe to the channel as well. And yeah, we'll see you guys